Now, this week, I'm extremely excited to be returning to this series as I'll be discussing the 5th episode of the Amazing Digital Circus. Now, this was a really interesting episode as a lot of the promotion leading up to this episode was just a lot of clips on YouTube showing a lot of different adventures, so it was really curious as to which one they would commit to for this episode, but it seems Kane wants to do a lightning round as we get a return of the suggestion box, and we pretty much get to see what all of the characters would like to do on their adventures. Now, at least for me, I really appreciated this episode because it was a lot more calming, and we got a lot more character-driven writing rather than the adventure-based set pieces, and there was a lot to enjoy in this episode, from some really great character connection between Pomni and Ragatha, and especially Pomni and Jax, and this was just a great way to get some grounded conversation, because all these characters have been jumping around from adventure to adventure that they never really had any time to sit at a bar and talk, or watch the stars go by. I'm really interested to seeing where this goes, especially when it comes to Jax, as I feel like there is a lot to dig into when it comes to his character, especially between him and Ragatha, as I feel like there's going to be a big reveal that'll happen later on that is going to honestly just break my heart. Now, to get into some of the details of this episode, Kane really is struggling with the concept of them enjoying their own ideas more than his ideas, and I'm sure that'll culminate later on in the series with him questioning his own reason for being if they are totally content being on their own and doing their own thing. Now, I will say the baseball scene was pretty fun. I'm just upset that Gangle didn't get an evil version, but Evil Pomni and Evil Jax were honestly my favorites. I loved the crassness of Evil Pomni, but I loved the genuine sweetness of Evil Jax, and I'm just really surprised that none of the main cast were like, hey, can we switch Jax? Can we, have the good Jax, or the evil Jax? But aside from that, the other thing we got in this episode is some backstory. And you know I love lore. And we got to hear what each character did with their lives before they were brought on to whatever company created the Amazing Digital Circus. Gangle was more of an artist. Zubul was more of a bartender / tattoo artist. And Pomni, surprisingly enough, worked at a grocery store, which I found incredibly relatable. But there was one detail that Pomni brought up that I thought was really thought-provoking, and that is the fact that she had this YouTube hobby where she would film herself going into abandoned buildings, which means I don't think Pomni was an employee of the company. I'm pretty sure that Pomni invaded an abandoned building, found a dusted-up VR headset, put it on, and got sucked into the world. I don't think she's connected to the Amazing Digital Circus at all. But I will say the one theory I will have for this episode is I believe the ending of this series is going to be Pomni finding a way through her glitch, which was not referenced a single time in this episode, that she's able to find a way to unabstract all of the characters. Because we know how full the basement is, and I'm sure there are plenty of characters that had connections with Ragatha, Jax, and all the others through the time, especially Kinger's wife, so I'd love to see that kind of happy ending. However, I know a large portion of the fanbase just want to see them escape, but again, I don't think that's what this is about. I don't think this is about escape. I think this is just about them finding peace as a family in a world they find themselves in. But I will say, to touch on the animation, it was beautiful and expressive as always, and I honestly wouldn't be too upset if we got a couple more of these episodes where it's just a chill vibe, where they're just hanging out, talking, having character growth, and just getting to know one another. It was honestly really touching and really relaxing to be able to just enjoy these characters rather than the adventures they find themselves surrounded by. But that's pretty much everything I have to discuss when it comes to the 5th episode of the Amazing Digital Circus. Funnily enough, this will be the first episode to air on the PCE Shorts channel, so by all means go and check out the older episodes where I go over all the other episodes and where we as a group go over the pilot episode. But my hats go off to Glitch and Gooseworks, as this has been a lovely series and I really hope we get more of it. But as I've said in previous episodes, at least for now, they know where the ending is, so I'm sure they kind of had the story plotted out. I just hope we still have episodes to come, because I worry that once we get to double digits, we'll be closer to the end than we'd like to be. But yeah, at this point, I think it's time for me to send it back to me and my friends as we discuss Invincible Versus.